9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome to Spirit Talks. I'm your favorite host, Sharath, and in this show, we'll have wonderful leaders and speakers and esoteric teachers from various parts of the world who will share their love, compassion, and their compassionate journeys and their modalities onto how they're empowering humanity at large. Today, our esteemed guest, and we call him a happy doctor, he's a wonderful scientist. He's as well an indigenous in his past life. We'll find about that from him. He is as well a subject matter expert in quantum DNA, laser technology, optical pace conjugation, and he is as well the pioneer and founder of new energy medicines called Gematria. He has helped various people and patients across the world in the ailments of immune system related ailments. As well, he's doing his current research in the current COVID-19 crisis. That is a virus called the coronavirus as well. He is widely read, and he has so much of information today to share about his scientific breakthroughs in the Merkaba dynamics, the vortexes, and the anti-vortexes. So let's find out more from the happy doctor, and let me introduce the amazing, the humorous, and the wonderful guest of my show, Spirit Talks today, Dr. Todd Ovokaitis. Dr. Todd, how are you doing today? Welcome to my show, Spirit Talks.
Thank you so much. Fantastic to be on with you today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And finally, we made it through. I'm glad, and I'm very happy that you gave me time today. I mean, you took out time from your very busy schedule and came to do 2 episodes with me, and that is highly commendable. And firstly, let me tell you, I'm a great fan of you. And I think almost 10 years back, I was actually planning to come to a Cryon seminar to actually meet you, but I couldn't make that happen because I had few assignments going on. But I'm feeling so privileged and fortunate that today I'm interviewing you. That's such a synchronicity. What do you feel?
Oh, it's my great honor, actually, to be on with you. I think the feeling is mutual.
Thank you. It's very heartwarming to have you here. I can feel your positive energy. As always, I saw you in videos, and I'm always overwhelmed with your teachings about so many things, because you wear so many hats on your head. From DNA to the Merkaba to your latest scientific breakthroughs also. So to just warm up and to break the ice for the audience, the audience of Money TV International would actually love to know. Before I delve into your scientific breakthroughs and the current research you're doing and all the things, all the wonderful accomplishments you have achieved in all these 30 years or association with Cryon. First, let me ask you some some simple ones. Of course, all the scientific things are simple for you and complex for us, but right. But we want to know more about your childhood, your family, your education, where you started, and I read that you were fascinated by science at the age of 5. So just want to know, more about that as well.
Sure. Well, I remember I was about 5 years old, and I was driving my father's Cadillac and on his lap at the time. And he asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I told him I wanted to be a quantum physicist. He was like,
wow, that's amazing. At the age of 5.
Yeah, I was fascinated by Einstein and his work, and I was really very interested in the kind of mind that would contribute as he did. I had a sense that even when I was 5 years old, and then when I was 8, I began studying lasers. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually took the L volume of the World Book Encyclopedia, and I had it with me for 3 weeks in the 3rd grade until there was a class uprising that I was hoarding the L volume, so I had to give it up. But by that point, I fully read everything that was about lasers in there.
Got it. Got it. So that was. So tell me about your family. How did you spend your time with them, and your later education, your schooling? Any interesting, events at that time?
Well, it was interesting because I had the unique luxury growing up of having not one but 2 fathers.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my biological father, whose business was owning dance schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I began my dance training at the age of 7 and was a certified professional ballroom dance instructor before I started my senior year of high school. So I was a 15-year-old dance pro from that side. And then I also grew up with my mother and stepfather, and they actually wound up living right across the street from each other in the same complex. So I literally had a multiplicity of parents, which I thought was pretty great, actually. And my stepfather joined the military in the Air National Guard, so I had like his very disciplined uh, demeanor. Though he's a wonderful person. And then I had my fun-loving biological father. So it was a balance always between the discipline and the celebration, basically. And my stepfather helped me when he was in his flight training. He went to Alabama, so I was in Selma, Alabama for a summer, and that's where I built my first time machine. And he helped me do that, so that was kind of fun. That was based
Wow.
on a magnetic engine that was replicating the magnetic fields and fluxes that you would have in geologic history. So it's basically recreating the Earth's geomagnetic influences of different ages, and in a sense creating a type of magnetic geological time machine. So that was when I was 10. And it
Wow.
was at, at the age of 13 that I really became enamored with DNA and began to study everything I could about it. And that wasn't part of my curriculum. I just really knew it was important. And even then had the feeling, if we fully understood DNA, that we would be able to not only cure diseases, but rewrite our biological history, that we could change our lifespans. We could live a lot longer, a lot healthier, and achieve more of our potential. So that was all part of my growing up through grade school.
Wonderful. That's so wonderful. I mean, this is so fascinating because the thread of learning started at 5, and I'm taken aback when you said that you were interested in quantum physics at the age of 5, and at the age of 10 you made that time machine, right?
Mhm.
So how did that go, and what was the reaction of friends and family?
They always knew I was weird. So they gave me credit for being bright, but they always knew I was a little strange. So that has always been, I think, the territory and my reputation. So fun-loving, bright, and not normal.
That's what geniuses are called. They're above the normal. So definitely you are a genius. And 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 did you go back in time with your time machine or no? I'm
Well,
just
it's very interesting. What I was
investigating this.
studying was the germination of radish seeds. And they were relatively crude experiments in a sense as regards the metrics, but it was quite interesting because compared to the control, as we modified the magnetic fields, we saw some very significant differences in germination. So we got much bigger radish germination shoots much faster when we applied the magnetic fields in a certain way. It looked like a time capsule, basically. We built out of aluminum something that looked something like Apollo 12. It's kind of fun. And
Wonderful.
I thank my
That's
stepdad.
really
He was, yeah, he was great mechanically. He still is. And so I needed that sort of metal machine shop expertise to build the structure, and then it was up to me to define how to modify the magnetics that we had inside the capsule.
That's so wonderful, and I mean, that is beyond comprehension, Dr. Todd. I mean, highly commendable. I mean, even conceiving that idea at that age is, I mean, for all of us, it is an impossibility. So I congratulate you for that. Totally appreciate, where you're heading toward. I think your intuition was bang on from your childhood. So because I mean, I didn't even hear the word DNA when I was. I mean, I don't think even at the age of 15. So only I think when I was in college, I just came to know few things here and there. But even then, it was hazy in my mind for all of us basically. So, but I think you were destined for that as well. I mean, I think there were predispositions that you will make all these groundbreaking breakthroughs in your life. So you were the recipient of the Boston Law. One second, I'm just edit this part. So, Dr. Todd, that was beautiful from your side about your scientific mind from the childhood. You were the recipient, you were the proud recipient of the Boston Law Award and the Brookie Pioneer Award. So tell us a little about that, and how did you feel that time? Were you excited, or were you feeling proud about yourself?
Oh, sure. That was great. That was during high school. And I was really blessed that I had incredibly good teachers at the high school level. It was a very small school, but we somehow had an incredibly good math teacher who took me through basically a good bit of college level calculus just as a high school student, and an incredibly good physics and chemistry teacher as well. So I was quite, I would say, blessed and pleased that I had such good training. And the Bosch and Loam Award was what celebrated the student I felt had the best chance of a, how you say, high profile scientific career. And I think, a number of persons that proved to be successful scientists and contributors were at that level recipients of that award. I know at least one other person who got the Bosch and Loam Award. The Bucky Pioneer was more amusing. That was related to where I grew up, which was Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Bucky Pioneer just refers to the pioneer that helped to found the city. And that was more an acknowledgement of the student who was going to go on to pave the way with new fields of knowledge and learning. And to a degree, that really happened. And part of it was also being acknowledged as the valedictorian, the first in the class for the school. So all of those acknowledgments came together, which, at that point, finishing high school before starting college was how you say, heartwarming.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I mean, we congratulate at large, for your accomplishments, and I mean, you have helped so many people, with gematria and to relieve stress. I mean, to create real well-being in all, because right, sometimes the word healing goes a little towards the negative side. So I'm using the word well-being here. The other day I learned that well-being is far more powerful than just a normal health. So you have enhanced the well-being of so many people, and a lot of people told me about uh, your help to them. So that is as well commendable. My next question will be, uh, you know, I mean, we heard about your school, we heard about your awards, and we heard about your interests in DNA, and you were so focused in science, and especially in the field of medicine, uh, and so that led you to so many things. I mean, as well, you did traverse into the esoteric world, and people. I mean, I think Ryan called you Yoi also. I'll go to the next question uh, as well. I mean, that is a special question, so I don't want to, dilute it here because I want a good answer from you, because I just heard him saying about that, but I want you to tell. Who is Yoi. But before that, still while you were in your college, you were pursuing pulmonary science, and and you were having a fellowship there, and you were interested in the immune system and the the deadly disease AIDS as well. So what gravitated you to that particular field?
Mhm. Right. This is the part of the story where I really moved into what would be considered the balance between oh, academic medicine and energetic medicine or esoteric medicine. There's about 10 years of the story at the same time that I was in medical school, which was ultimately at Johns Hopkins. And I pursued medicine mostly because of my love for DNA. I mean, I knew that there would be lots of opportunities in the medical world and the scientific world, but I needed to keep all of my options open. So I didn't pursue medical school because it was a drive to be a doctor. It was more a drive to keep all the doors open for the development of discoveries with respect to DNA. And it was really quite extraordinary. After 2 years at Northwestern, I was accepted into a program at Johns Hopkins, one of 26 students in America, that you applied only after a year and a half of college. And it was a type of accelerated program where I got the best of Johns Hopkins, which was and is one of the top two leading research institutes in America. And many people don't know Hopkins is where many of the traditions of medical education have evolved. At one time, Hopkins had the leading pioneers in four different fields. So it was a wonderful place to train, and it kept my options open. And that's also where I really delved deep into Eastern mysticism. So during my time at Hopkins
That's
Medical
amazing.
School, mhm, I, I was also very deeply studying Eastern mysticism, Eastern mystics, did 4 trips to India to work with a doctor treating villagers in a free clinic there. So my entire medical training, starting at Hopkins and then going on to Georgetown, where I did an internship, residency, and chief medical residency in internal medicine, followed by pulmonary. It was all in parallel with a very deep Eastern mystical track. It all went together in one fabric. So I wasn't ever just learning medicine. I was also learning it with Eastern philosophy, um, understanding of yoga, meditation, the ability of the mind to create uh, the human potential, what abilities get unfolded as certain states of consciousness are achieved. It all went together. And it's a bit of a long answer. I sometimes do that. To something straightforward, but I wanted to fill in the backstory a little bit there. And when I was in my final leg of training, which was pulmonary medicine, that was when the whole HIV epidemic was really taking off and being recognized. And I had an
Year was that?
insight. What's that?
What year was that?
That was late 80s.
Okay.
Mhm.
Right.
And as the first treatments became available, it became clear that the virus worked at such a fundamental level
Mhm.
in the chemistry of the cell.
Mhm.
In other words, the virus is an RNA virus that gets converted into DNA through a process called reverse transcription, and then literally gets spliced into the DNA of the immune cells that it attacks. So it was working at such a fundamental level of cell biology and particularly DNA chemistry that I realized that medical treatments for it would tend to be toxic. And people are doing much better now with the treatments that have evolved, but there still is a significant, toxicity uh, to those programs, or at least there certainly can be. It gets better and better. At that time, though, what
Talking
was
about.
available was pretty toxic. So the question was, the key
Mhm.
insight was that, and it was an intuition that there was a part of the nucleic acid structure of HIV that was different from human. Even though the building blocks might be the same, it might fold differently. And if that were the case, the principle of resonance in physics is that everything vibrates, and
Mhm.
everything vibrates in a very specific way based upon its geometry, its structure, and what it's made of. That's called the natural frequency. And I believe that if we could find the frequency element of the virus that was different from the human, we could literally find a frequency pattern that we could control it or eliminate it without having toxicity.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, that's so enlightening, because what I'm learning from you right now is, I mean, correct me if I'm correct or
Mhm.
wrong, that essentially, I mean, you're treating the disease on the basis of the frequency and vibration, than actually, locally treating it from, it's, I mean, it's more of a deeper penetration than treating something on the surface. Am I correct, Dr. Todd?
Treating it at the fundamental matter of which it is composed. That is correct. Approaching the specific structure that one is attempting to modify. And resonance is something that we can discuss. You can do various things. You can take something that is good and make it stronger. And there's various times that we want to do that, especially with regeneration medicine. Or you can take something that you don't want and neutralize it, depending upon how you use the frequencies and sort of track the frequency shifts as the energy in a system changes. So energy medicine is really all about the concept of frequency and matching frequency and finding the frequency that will bring the system into a better balance, a better energetic equilibrium state.
That's as well eye-opening, because you have touched on the scratch the subject of energy now, because I have learned that matter and energy are, one and the same in different states. So, but my audience want to learn about, and especially me, because I'm also scientifically inclined, because you made a bridge between the esoteric, the energetic world, and the physical world we are living in. But still, you are grounded more uh, with science, and you're using physics and chemistry for your experiments in your laboratory. On that note, the first question I want you to, spill the beans about to my audience is a lot of hoopla around the word DNA, and and I know scientists only know, part of the story, but uh, there is a huge magnitude of information about DNA and inside DNA. So just tell us, just unravel something in simple words for our audience about what really is DNA.
Mm-hmm. we might need to have a longer episode for us getting into those kind of fundamental questions. So I will summarize that and touch upon what is unique and how I've taken this particular path. So DNA, as almost every student in biology knows, is a very long information molecule. And there are basically four bases, ACTG, adenine, cytosine, thymine, and guanine, that are the codes. And so much of what we do is on computers, and its binary code was pretty similar. It's basically 4 digits instead of 2 digits, but it's fundamentally the same. It's an informational system. And the human genome is 3 billion base pairs long. And if those were letters in books, it would take a whole encyclopedia, a series of large books on a shelf to contain all that information. So the human genome is a massive code for building all the protein structures that are either functional, like enzymes and receptors, or functional, like proteins that give structure. That entire code is quite explicit and it's written out. And where my training and my life path took a big change was already having some idea about DNA and how it worked, and using resonance to, say, neutralize a virus, which ultimately did successfully, but also what the deeper function and deeper workings of DNA was. And that had to do, after I finished my formal training, I finished my pulmonary fellowship, I moved to California to study basically with the medical intuitive, so I could really learn how you say the energetic side of medicine, the intuitive side, and literally to be able to read the body and its energy. And in the course of that,
Innate intelligence. Are you talking about the innate that is inside the human body?
it's partly, that's almost a slightly different question.
Mm-hmm.
Innate is at a very deep level of ordering uh, information within the body, in a sense, as I understand it, as at the spirit and soul, and ultimately how it plays out into our physicality.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas just talking about DNA itself, when I was in my training for shortly after I moved to California, I did a class in meditation with my teacher at the time, whose name was Patty White. She was the one who inspired me to leave the East Coast where I'd done my training and move to beautiful sunny Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
And in a Kundalini meditation class, we first learned how to activate Kundalini. I'm sure your audience, uh, that's a term
Some
that
of
is
them.
known to many of them anyway. The
Correct.
so-called serpent power and
Correct.
energy coiled at the base of the spine, that when
Mm-hmm.
it's awakened, instead of the two usual channels, the left and right, called Ida and Pingala, that
Mm-hmm.
are active, when they're in perfect balance, then the central channel called Sushumna is activated, and this power goes up the spine, all the
Correct.
way to the pineal,
Mm-hmm.
and creates an activation state that can be described as the opening of the 1,000-petaled lotus of illumination.
Correct.
And we did a process of awakening the energy, moving it up the spine, taking it to the crown. And they did something very interesting and unique, which was running different colors. So when you activate energy, you can run energy and circulate it. Well, we, through intention, experimented with understanding the flavors of Kundalini. And the metaphor was colors of the rainbow. And so we started with the basic color red and moved up the frequencies to violet. And the setup was that we did this as an exercise and we had a scribe. So we don't often have a meditation where we have someone there to actually write down our experience, but here I did. And it was very interesting going through the colors and the different nuances of what each color of Kundalini did. When we got to the highest frequency, the violet, I had an experience like Jodie Foster, if you remember the movie Contact, where she went through the wormhole and came to this new dimension. So I experienced that.
Right.
But that was before the movie came out. And I came
was
to
that
this.
was that your vision? Was that
What's that?
You saw that in a vision, right? It was a vision, or
It was a vision.
Like...
Yeah.
Mhm.
I literally just went through into a different reality, a different space.
Mhm.
And in my experience, unlike Jodie Foster's, I had guardians of the gate.
Correct.
And these were, you could describe them like 8 foot tall, Alibaba like warriors that had big curved swords. And they had a message, which was a message of respecting the information. They said that the knowledge in this realm, you have permission to enter, but it carries a lot of responsibility. And they said others had taken this information and not used it appropriately, and they were destroyed. And they literally showed people being decapitated, flying heads and that sort of thing. So the message was clear to be to be careful or to be respectful and to use the information properly because it was powerful. And when I went through this portal, what I experienced was seeing a room full of DNA, as though you'd taken the DNA in the nucleus of a cell that's 1 micron or 1 millionth of a meter wide and expanded it to fill an entire room. The profundity of that was the communication. And this is, I believe, the information that you're looking for, like what is the deeper nature of DNA. And the communication was that the understanding of science about DNA is correct but incomplete. DNA is indeed a massive information molecule, an encyclopedia, a library of how to build all of the complex proteins that are required to create life. And it said the understanding of science is correct but incomplete. That in addition, DNA is basically coils within coils within coils. And for understanding that, we have this metaphor in our brains. I mean, DNA is iconic. We see the double helix everywhere. Right. However, DNA is usually not just a single double helix. Most of the DNA in the cell is not being actively transcribed at one time. And when it isn't, it then supercoils. So that double helix becomes a strand that then coils into a bigger coil. And that coils into a bigger coil, and that even into a bigger coil, up to 7 layers of supercoiling. So you have coils within coils, and in the cell you have moving charges. There are charged molecules that are moving. And when you have that system, basically...
Is that anyway, I mean, can I interrupt you? I mean, I don't know, because of my scientific curiosity, I mean, somehow it is striking me. Is it anywhere, I mean, I know it may be a different question, but you need not answer this at length, but is this anywhere related to superconductivity or interference or the bioelectric field of the body? I mean, I know I'm being a novice here. I mean, I may sound crazy though, but just wanted to clear that doubt from my mind. I don't even know if I'm making sense. Just wanted to ask that question.
Well, sounding crazy is usually one step before a big breakthrough in understanding. So that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Well, there's a lot to be said about that. And your question was, what about superconductivity? And that's a profound insight, because there has been work looking at the conductivity of DNA itself. Now, the structure of DNA, as you know, is a double helix. The outside, there is a sugar called ribose and phosphate, and those alternate to create the outside. On the inside is where you have the DNA bases, the ACTG, and the T's pair with the A's and the G's pair with the C's. And they're connected not by strong covalent bonds, but by basically ionic type, type interactions where the difference in charges are attracting each other, but it's not a full strong bond. But there's so many of these that you create the integrity of the structure. And it turns out that there have been studies looking at, well, what happens if you apply an electrical current to one end of DNA? Now, the basic composition of DNA, which is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, generally that would create a resistor, something that would slow the flow of electrons. But that central tunnel down DNA, where you have the elements of the base pairs, the A's and T's together and the C's and G's together, and how their relative charges and fields line up, it creates a unique type of channel. And what they found is what they called the ballistic transmission of electrons. And to convert it to layman's terms, basically they were saying that the central core of DNA is a type of room temperature superconductor. Mm-hmm. So that's quite
Somewhere
relevant.
there, I was scratching that. I mean, I don't know. Probably I was,
Yes.
you know, just, maybe a glimpse was correct, what I felt. So,
Yes, absolutely. So DNA has an intrinsic superconductive property. It can also absorb and re-emit photons of light, which is relevant to the work that I'm doing now.
Mhm.
And the key information in that vision was that you have almost essentially like a radio transmission and reception center. You have coils that have electronic fluctuations. And when you have coils of electronic fluctuations, you get, in essence, a type of radio transmission. And coils tune to each other, so you can also get electronic reception. So when you have this system, it's fundamentally like a complex transmitter receiver system.
Mhm.
And in essence, DNA is like a kind of radio that tunes to particular types of frequencies.
Mhm.
And the core instruction, the core learning from that vision was that if you can learn, if we can understand how DNA creates and transmits these signals and receives these signals, we will be able to learn how to create frequency patterns and signatures that will literally instruct a sick cell to become healthy or an old cell to become young again. And that was the real key, the ability to instruct, to literally give the information, the patterning that will give the DNA the information it needs to reformat what's happening in the cell to create health or longevity.
Wow. So you're giving the key for health and well-being. The one,
Yes.
it was churning in my mind and everybody's mind right now in different parts of the world. How to be healthy, and it is so elusive, health. trying to catch hold of, what exactly it is, and I think we only know, an iota of what really health is. But I think and you have beautifully explained how, DNA can actually generate health in your whole body. I mean, I've not understood the whole thing, but a gist of what the complete, the ocean called gematria. I've just, just tried to understand only a particle of that. So, really grateful for such a lovely insight, Dr. Todd. I'm feeling, uh, very insightful actually. Just few ideas are bubbling in my mind. But before that, I wanted to come to the uh, main question of the current times as well, because you're doing research, you have done enough significant research on AIDS and immune system. But the current pandemic, I have heard, because I'm definitely not a doctor, so there were a lot of speculations and news on social media and on Google and so many other places. It was bombarded that it is the current coronavirus is a immune system breaker, and and it calcifies the lungs. So I've also read, and from your previous with your previous conversation, I heard that you are doing research on the current pandemic and the virus also. Can you talk about that? And because it will be really helpful to a lot of people, because so many people are breaking their heads against this, and everybody is in absolute panic. So this will be really relieving to all of us.
Mhm. Well, it's important not to panic.
Right.
And
How not to? Please tell us. That too.
so the best way not to panic is simply to have good information
Right.
and to know what it is and what it isn't and what can be done that really makes a difference. Like yes, there are risks. Yes, there have been, unfortunately, many people that have contracted and succumbed to it. And what I've done, just for the sake of knowledge and information and self-empowerment, is I've done the work, I've looked at the clinical research and the literature, and I've created a special report, which is basically COVID-19 preventatives and potential cures. And I said potential cures only because the studies have only been so large and not considered entirely definitive, yet they're large enough and the data is good enough that at every step along the way, there are ways to greatly reduce the risks and improve the outcomes with respect to corona. So this report, actually, if you like, I can make it available as a gift to your listeners. We'll give you a place to just go online and download it if you like. And at the front end, at the prevention level, of course, there's what it's being done with social distancing and the masks and the hand washing and basic hygiene. And that's all great. And that makes a difference. What has not been as well popularized are the additional things that one can do that are very simple nutritionally that can further reduce the risk of symptomatic infection by probably 80 to 90% or more. And the first of these is the use of a nutrient called N-acetylcysteine, or NAC. And for those of you that really study nutrition, cysteine is an amino acid that is part of a 3 amino acid molecule, a tripeptide called glutathione, which is incredibly important for immunity, both for viruses and for anti-tumor effects. So the benefit of N-acetylcysteine, it's a stabilized delivery method of cysteine to build glutathione. And there was a study in Italy, relatively large scale in flu season, which showed that taking NAC at a level of 600 milligrams twice a day reduced the risk of symptomatic outbreak of respiratory infection by 70%. So just taking one simple nutrient, just one of many that make a difference, already was reducing the risk of a significant infection by 70%. And then there are other nutrients that are critically important. Vitamin D has been shown to be very important, especially with corona, taking it at adequate levels. And this has been one of the hot spots in, I will call it, a complementary and alternative medicine, that vitamin D levels have been much lower than are optimal. So it used to be uh, getting to a level of roughly 30 in terms of the way vitamin D is measured was felt to be a good level. And more recent work is suggesting ideally that level is driven more to the 60 to 80 range. And at that level, the risk of infectious diseases is significantly lower of many types, particularly respiratory infections. And there are also anti-tumor protective effects. So most people aren't getting nearly enough vitamin D, especially if they're not in a sunny climate or getting out in the sun, even if they are in a sunny climate. So for most people, taking a moderate dose of vitamin D, at least for 6 to 8 weeks, would be reasonable, on the order of 5,000 units a day. Ideally, a person should get their vitamin D levels checked, and if they're not as high as 30, it means they're really low, and that creates higher susceptibility if it's that low, and definitely should be aggressively supplemented. And more ideally, people should aim to get the levels to the 60 to 80 range, or even 90. So just those two things alone probably already make an 80 to 90% difference in risk of symptomatic infection. Vitamin C is also quite significant at all levels, at prevention and even late stage infection. And probably most people should take an additional 2 to 4 grams of vitamin C per day. Then the minerals zinc and selenium make a very big difference. So just that simple constellation of nutrients that I've described, which is in the report and with various scientific information to back it, that alone makes a very big difference. Now we have a formulation that we call accelerated immune recovery capsules that was part of the program that we used for HIV in Africa, that significantly accelerated immune recovery, whether people were on the antiretrovirals or not. So that's one thing that can be used. And 2 capsules twice a day would provide a good sampling of all those nutrients, except for vitamin D, which should be taken for most people, if they haven't, probably 5 to 10,000 units a day to get their levels up to a level that would give them better immune defenses. So that's the preventive side of the equation. And then,
is there any way to build, because you have integrated both the esoteric and you're pretty scientific, basically. I mean, that's so stunning for me. I mean, I can not still fathom that fact, because I mean, I've interacted with people who are in the esoteric field but know a little bit about the scientific world, a few jargon here and there, and there are modern scientists who know about meditation and the holistic uh, modalities, but uh, friends, this is the person. I mean, I've known, the only person, I mean, I know basically, who has very beautifully intertwined and interpolated and rather entangled, I should say, both the esoteric and the scientific, because you did not discount the scientific, saying that, hey, I mean, the scientists don't know anything, because you're a scientist yourself, yet you've beautifully embraced the Eastern methods, or all the things related to the esoteric world. So my next question is going toward DNA again. This has been my question too, and a lot of others, other viewers who are already watching, and some friends of mine asked me about this. So you spoke about the implications of DNA and how it rejuvenates you and gives you absolute health. Uh, just, tell us about some modalities probably you practice or you may recommend, which can be simple in day-to-day life, so that it can, enhance our everyday living,
Hmm.
because it's becoming a challenge for everybody.
Hmm. Well, I appreciate the acknowledgement of combining, as it were, the best of East and West.
Mhm.
And there are so many simple practices that I will call lifestyle practices that support higher states of well-being. And
Mhm.
I really acknowledge the statement that you made, that there is a beauty in focusing on health, not as the absence of disease, but what is the highest state of being possible? What's the highest health possible? What's the greatest expression of our abilities, our creativity possible? And going beyond this notion that health is defined by virtue of not having diagnosed diseases, but it's defined by exploring our human potential, um,
Correct.
creating states of mind, whether those are states of serenity or bliss or happiness or high physical vitality or reduced need for sleep or meditative states where we communicate with higher levels of information. That's really where um, I look at, one of, for a person that stands before me, the first question would be, well, is there any health condition that needs to be overcome as a first step? But once that's done, once you get past those things, how can you take someone higher and higher?
Right.
And the practices that, if you're asking me personally, there's a daily pranayamic breathing practice that I do.
Hmm.
And there's one that I particularly like that's in an oral tradition called 100 Days to Immortality,
Wow.
which,
And we would all need that, Dr. Chan, for sure. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. It's very interesting.
mhm. And that is uh, based on the Taoist concepts, Qigong concepts that describe an energy circuit in the body called the microcosmic orbit, which is a channel that starts uh, in the perineal area, um, in the nether parts, basically, and is an exercise that brings the energy all the way up the central energetic meridian channels, up the back, up to the crown, and all the way down and around. And then once everything is connected, to circulate it. And then every day you intend to circulate it even more clearly, more intensely, relieve and clear the blocks. And that's kind of a core of maintaining good health, is activating that circuit and circulating energy. And it's 100 days in part because it creates the habit of doing it every day and constantly remembering to keep the channels open and clear. So if you circulate everything clear in the central meridians, then that of course goes to all the other channels throughout the body as well. And that maintains the health and vitality of the organ. So there's that practice. There are the toning practices. And it's very interesting. I have a very good friend and a master musician and artist named Jonathan Goldman. And he has um, worked for years in the realm of making tones with the voice and creating different types of tones and harmonics. And he's done a very nice job of summarizing that in his own writings. And he has a website that people can go to that I would recommend. And he summarizes the data that the simple act of humming, I mean, doesn't require having a great voice. You don't have to be an opera singer. You don't have to be a master of bhajans or artis. It's simply
Got it.
simply humming with the voice, just a simple just doing that for 5 minutes once or twice a day has been shown to improve immune function, reduce
It's
stress.
scientifically proven now.
Scientifically studied and proven that the simple act of humming 5 minutes once or twice a day makes the immune system stronger.
Correct. I cannot ask the question it's scientifically proven or not because I'm talking to a scientist and we got all the statistics from you. That's a wrong question though. Excuse me for that. I mean, it was on a lighter note. I mean, these other things are bubbling up in my mind because you're a DN.
Let me be complete, because so there's a breathing, which I think is very important to have a regular breathing practice. That's critically important. There are various types of breathing practices, different types of so-called pranayama, the energy in the breath. And there's a whole art and science of tones. We can talk a lot more about that. As
Absolutely.
you know,
we have one more episode as well. So I'm ready to listen to you.
Right.
As I told you, you're making my work easy because I'm just asking you the questions and making you answer.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's the science of making tones with the voice, and a whole art and science of that. We've created a whole system called pineal tones, and have events where hundreds of people sing these tones in combinations in various ways that create powerful overtones and harmonics that transport health and awareness to a whole new level. Then there's also physical exercise, and what can be done to keep the body strong. And that's a whole discussion into itself of the different forms of exercise. And I like to do different types of yoga, and that gets into your traditions as well, the different types of postures that when you align the body in a certain way, you're not only strengthening the physical body, you're also making the body a type of antenna that then is a receiver of the information related to that posture. So you might have spoken of yoga many times, on your program, and a deep level of understanding is that just like DNA, which is an antenna that receives and transmits information and frequencies in certain ways, the postures of yoga are also going all the way back to Patanjali, in your traditions, goes back to creating the body itself as a type of antenna that resonates with certain types of information, that strengthens and solidifies energy in particular body areas, concentrations of energy that we call chakras or energy centers, and doing a system of postures can activate the entire body, from the root chakra to the crown. And that's another type of practice that I often do. And there are times that I'll do a tapas, or a 49 days, seven times seven, of particular practices very intensely to build another level of capacity and ability and energy. And then we get into the whole exercise concept of aerobic cardiovascular building energy versus anaerobic, which is muscle building, and all those are components of what I would call optimum health and achieving our full capacity.
That's really fascinating and very interesting and very useful to all of us and our One TV international viewers and audience at large. And because you're a DNA expert, there was one more question which was running in my mind that give me a second. I think there is some noise in the background. I think somebody is cutting the grass.
It is Saturday, so there you go.
I think they'll be done in 1 minute. So
It's the
Taking a
weekend. It's
small,
time to cut the lawn. There you go.
correct.
Oh, it's great. And the one other part, the other component of a general program is what I would call nutritional metabolic, which is the kind of food that you eat. And because our food doesn't necessarily have everything that we need, even what I would call a metabolic medicine, where particular nutritional compounds used in certain levels, in certain ways and combinations can also greatly affect health and well-being. So we really look comprehensively, we layer everything, uh, all those elements together to create an individualized program for people.
Just taking a small break. I mean, this noise is kind of disturbing. I'll ask one more
Of
question.
course it is.
We're
Time for
almost
God.
at the verge of completion, Dr. Todd. I'm
Mhm.
just calculating the time. It's getting to
Yes.
1 hour, so I have to include some
Okay.
pictures of yours also.
Sure.
And we have to do that landing page and so many things I wanted to do about this.
Yes.
So many, yeah. Just with this one question, I will conclude
Okay.
because there are so many other things I wanted to ask. I've already written down the question, but I'm asking them from my heart because I don't want to go through them and see that will not come, naturally. So we have discussed about the COVID, and I'm going to ask you about if I can ask you about the Manchester paper, just a little bit about that,
Sure.
and then your research on stem cells, which is very important again for all of us. And then at that point, I may ask you about regeneration also,
Hmm.
how a starfish can grow its arm and why humans don't, and something like some crazy questions I'm going to ask because I heard them Kran telling a lot of times. But you, but you are the ace in that, and I have no clue about anything. So I'll ask you definitely about your pineal tones. What is your this thing, and then probably you'll go into the depths of again the a lot of us have read in Google and so many places, but no idea about what is the power of the pineal gland and the thymus, or are they
Hmm.
connected or whatever. I'm going to ask that too. But lot of questions also I have. So just so one last question I'll ask and I'll conclude the show, Dr. Todd. Let's see, maybe a couple of questions I can ask you. Uh, because I want to make pineal the next episode thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Pineal, and then about your laser and your all those things. The wanted to get into the deeper details of your technical things and how you became Yoi and all that and so many.
All that stuff.
This question, and with this question I'm going to all right. So Dr. Todd, okay, yes, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yes. So, Dr. Todd, I'm going to repeat verbatim something I read in an article about you. I think in your biography, it says that in March 2004, Dr. Todd Ovakaitis addressed the South African Natural Medicine Conference in Stellenbosch and received ovations for his work from doctors and professors of medicine who heralded his work as groundbreaking and worthy of a Nobel Prize. When I read that, I mean, I was reading more lines about you, but then I thought this particular one I wanted to address. So so what was that particular moment about?
Well, as I discussed earlier, I had an inspiration, an intuition during my pulmonary training, where I was doing a lot of procedures for persons with AIDS and pneumonia. And I had the insight that there was a part of the nucleic acid, the genetic code of the virus that somehow was shaped differently than human, and that we could use that. And it turned out that the intuition proved correct, that there are 4 parts of HIV where the folds are different. Instead of being the typical double helix, it's a so-called stem loop. And there's a particular protein that associates with the stem loop that we could then literally use vibration tuned to that particular molecular structure to disrupt it and inactivate the virus. So it's a long story of research and discovery of how we got from that idea late at night doing bronchoscopies in the ICU to getting to the laboratory where we cracked the code. The short story is that we figured out the wavelength and the way to modulate and the type of waveform to create, where we could literally completely inactivate HIV in the test tube. That it didn't require chemicals, it didn't require extreme conditions. It was literally the pure vibrational code that neutralized HIV in the test tube. And then we uh, were able to apply that to nutritional components, particularly antiviral herbs from the Amazon, to get very good results in studies we did in Africa for reversing HIV infection with, in a sense, vibrationally programmed, informationally coded antiviral herbs from the Amazon. So the work that was being acknowledged in South Africa was the scientific work where we showed that we could, in essence, cure AIDS in the test tube with pure vibration and no potentially harmful chemistry whatsoever. And that work was then further extended with studies we did both in Kenya and South Africa. And ultimately, actually in India, we have approval of a phase 2 clinical trial applying these principles that hopefully we will do one of these days soon.
Wish you all the best for that. You pushed the envelope of medicine to actually get through these breakthroughs, and highly appreciate the work. Uh, Another question is, how about? I mean, we have this pandemic though, but another chronic epidemic, rather, which is becoming a silent killer, both diabetes and hypertension, that is the high
Mhm.
blood pressure.
Mhm.
Are you doing any research on those two diseases as well?
Sure. Well, actually, hypertension isn't really that difficult. We have 2 different formulas that are clinically proven to be able to lower blood pressure naturally and easily. One is actually magnesium that we studied at Ijevsk University in Russia. And turns out that when it's looked at, most adults are magnesium deficient, and this could be a whole 1 hour program in itself, just talking about magnesium, what it is, how it works, the forms that the body needs for it to be used efficiently. And we've created a form of magnesium that has magnesium wrapped with amino acids. 2 amino acids curl around it in a type of coordination complex, which makes it much more efficient to be absorbed and used. And then we further enhance that with our laser technology. And in the study that we did in Russia, we showed that between the 2nd and 3rd week, elevated blood pressure returned to normal levels, probably because they were simply magnesium deficient within the cells. It also stabilized heart rhythm, improved cardiac efficiency by about 20%, and reduced the risk of abnormal atrial and ventricular rhythm patterns. So that was just the simple use of magnesium. And then there's also a nutrient called arginine, which is one of the 20 amino acids that the body uses to make nitric oxide, which naturally opens blood vessels and improves blood flow. And we also found that if we gave a large enough dose of the laser enhanced arginine, that we could also lower blood pressure an average of 20 millimeters systolic and diastolic. So blood pressure actually has a number of interventions where one can use things that are safe, natural, and building to the body to get blood pressure into normal range. Diabetes is more complex. There's type 1, which is the juvenile type, which is based on an insufficiency of the cells that produce the insulin. That's an autoimmune condition that destroys the so-called beta cells of the pancreas. And then there's type 2 diabetes, which is generally older persons that are overweight and have insulin resistance. So it's actually two different types of diseases with different types of solutions. And the second type is easier to treat. Generally, if you can create a program of weight loss as well as increased metabolic efficiency, that can be overcome. We could do a discussion of the ways of doing that. Type 1 diabetes is extremely interesting because it's two problems. It's an autoimmune disease as well as a cellular deficiency disease. And we're doing work with stem cells and metabolism to do both things. First, to shut off the autoimmune process, and then to use stem cells to repopulate the pancreas. And that can be further supported by a process called pulse IV insulin therapy, which is very interesting, which even if there is diabetes where the insulin sensitivity mechanisms are distorted or basically not working so that insulin resistance occurs, that you can resensitize the cells to insulin by recreating the normal way that the pancreas pulses insulin to the liver. And doing those sessions on a regular basis can reset the whole system to restore insulin sensitivity. So for type 1 and type 2 diabetes, pulse IV insulin therapy has been shown to greatly reduce and reverse the complications. For type 2 diabetes, it may assist in reversing the condition completely, especially when combined with even lesser degrees of weight loss. And for type 1, it's really good for preventing and reversing the complications, which of course the biggest concern with type 1 diabetes. And we're doing the work of combining those modalities with stem cells to have the ability to restore function even in type 1 diabetes. So those are all areas that we're looking at, yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, this will definitely help a lot of people because a lot of people are fighting hypertension and diabetes, Dr. Todd. And definitely, I mean, if time permits, we can do more sessions about those. I mean, with more surveys from people, uh, we'll do more shows on that. But in the interest of time, I'm the show here, and we have one more or maybe a couple of more now. So, so I mean, you've been so diligent and been so dedicated toward your work. My congratulations and uh, appreciation from my side and my audience as well to you. So thank you so much for all the lovely information you gave. Selflessly, you have unraveled so many mysteries. You demystified a lot of myths and misconceptions which were in the minds of a lot of people, including me. So thank you for that. So meet you in the next episode, and thanks for coming in my show, Spirit Talks, Dr. Todd.
A great honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, friends, that was Dr. Todd on Spirit Talks, and we'll have next episode again with Dr. Todd with more subjects. And as he's a subject matter expert of DNA, then there are more subjects which, which will be a surprise for all of you. And I feel it may be a surprise for Dr. Todd too. because I have some surprises for him at the end of the next show. So we'll see more of Dr. Todd in our next episode. Until then, ciao. That's it. Can we take a 5-minute break? I'll just be back.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So I'll just ask a couple of things to do here. I'll be back, Dr. Todd. Just 5 minutes. Did you get any different set of clothes or something, or
Oh, should
for
I
the
change my
second
shirt?
episode?
I can. Yeah, yeah. I didn't think about that, but yeah, I think I have something I can change into. Sure. Why not? Be right back. 5 minutes.
I'm back, Dr. Todd.
Nice. Just listening to Cecilia Bartoli, the greatest coloratura mezzo soprano of all times. Maybe I'm going to recruit her for the Aloha Choir.
Correct. Okay. We'd love to have those talks as well
Yes, of course.
about the Lemurian choir and your indigenous experience
Mm-hmm.
and all those things. So how do you pronounce this? You are also doing research or already working on key laser, QI? How do you
Key,
key?
like a key,
Okay,
like also pronounced chi, but I usually pronounce it key,
key.
or quantum information.
Mhm.
Also, chi
Wonderful.
as in life force.
Right. And very elusive to a lot of us. So, I mean, I'm a meditator. Uh, I do the zazen
Mm-hmm.
and vipassana, but
Mm-hmm.
I've not been practicing. I'm guilty myself to not been practicing regularly, but I will do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my show Spirit Talks is provoking me to do, because I have to stay strong and healthy. So,
Yes, of course. You have to embody what you speak about.
correct. Yes. Headspace for myself. So I'm going to start my show again.
So, in terms of offering a so-called landing page, I'm thinking we might. I have different sites. I have the Gematria site. I have a personal Dr. Tado site. I have the Pineal Tone site. I'm thinking because everybody around the world can do pineal tones, and some things aren't as accessible for the other types of offerings, but I might just direct people to pineal tones and have a landing page there, and they could have the COVID-19 report and probably some pineal tone recordings.
That will be really helpful to all of us.
Mhm.
Yes. We will discuss about that in this show as well.
Sure.
All right. Ladesh? I think it's still getting recorded. That's fine.
भैया stop जाए ना.
Q, Viva? Q.
Next to continue, huh?
Continue for 1 more hour. Yeah.
Okay. Ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome to Spirit Talks. I'm your favorite host, Sharath. And in this show, you'll have the esoteric journeys, and we delve deep with the speakers and all the spiritual leaders across the globe who will share their wisdom and knowledge about the esoterics and the spiritual world and their scientific breakthroughs for human empowerment. Yet again, we have our lovely, happy Dr. Todd, who needs no introduction, and who is a giant in the field of quantum DNA, laser technology, and pineal tones, and is as well infamous and famous for his gematria, new energy products, and medicines. So let's welcome Dr. Todd. Dr. Todd, once again, welcome to Spirit Talks in this episode 2.
Thank you, Sharath. Once again, a great pleasure and honor to be with you, and look forward to delving even deeper today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, how is the weather there?
Well, it's actually kind of cloudy and cold, which is quite unusual for Southern California. It's usually sunny and about 25 centigrade here.
I see that lovely Merkaba in your background, right? I mean, so we'll talk about that struck me, to ask a couple of questions about that too, because I didn't prepare a script about that, but the picture in the background, kind of poked me. Thanks for that picture as well. It's lovely. The background as well is beautiful, and you're looking handsome too.
Thank you. As are you.
Yes, you exactly exemplify and personify a happy doctor. as Grant says.
I work.
So,
Yes.
so on this happy note, we'll have a happy conversation with Dr. Todd today, and all the viewers of Mana TV International will be enthralled to glory, because he'll mix up his lovely humor and his insights and his wonderful science to enhance our knowledge and give us great epiphanies of wisdom inside us, inside and out. So I'm very enthusiastic, Dr. Todd, to ask you the first question. Uh, I'm always fascinated by your pineal tones. We'll go to that question, but a lot of us are eluded by what really is the pineal gland, and uh, it is a portal to something, and we'll know from you. And so, what is the connection between the pineal and the thymus, and what essentially is pineal, and what is its significance in the human body?
Mhm. So, a term that is used a lot in the esoteric world is the third eye.
Mhm.
And we typically think of that as the space in the center of the forehead, this where bindis are placed for significances of spirituality and awareness, and for giving acknowledgement to the desire for us to perceive more of who we are and what we are and where we come from.
Mhm.
So the pineal is fundamentally a type of eye.
Mhm.
And if you look at certain reptilian species, some still have their pineal gland, outside of the skull as a literal third eye on the top of the head.
Right.
And in evolutionary history, the pineal gland moved from outside the skull to inside the skull. So it
Mhm.
doesn't have light on it directly anymore, but it interacts intimately with the optic nerves and the optical pathways in the body.
Mhm.
So from the biological standpoint, not the esoteric spiritual, but the biological standpoint, the pineal gland is fundamentally a receptor organ that is monitoring cycles of light versus darkness. And in many species, for example, the cycles of days getting longer and shorter is very
Mhm.
important for reproductive cycles. So many birds, for example, the size of the gonads will change very dramatically based upon light versus darkness and the hormones that the pineal gland is secreting. So the
Mhm.
pineal gland is a light organ. It's about monitoring light, and it's about timing. It's short cycles and long cycles. So
Mhm.
even during the day, our hormone levels of different types of growth hormone, of cortisol, and many other hormones have a so-called diurnal rhythm, a daily rhythm of the times that the hormones are higher levels and lower levels and how that cycles through the day.
Mhm.
And it's the pineal gland that is the driver of determining
Mhm.
how those cycles are going. So the pineal gland is literally governing the levels and relationships of the hormones, the glands that are driving activities of other organs throughout the day. On the short cycles, the day-to-day, hour-to-hour cycling. And that is governed by how the eye is perceiving light versus darkness. And
Mhm.
for good sleep, of course, the pineal gland has as its major hormone output melatonin. So people
Mhm.
want to get better sleep, or they've just driven or flown a long distance, and they're in a new time zone, then melatonin helps to adjust to the new light versus dark cycle where they've come to.
Do you think
Then,
even the pills which are found off the counter
mhm,
and probably in the pharmacy stores where they sell the melatonin, is that as well helpful in the awakening of the pineal? to an extent?
I don't believe, well, I'm not sure. That's a different type of question. There are health benefits to supplemental melatonin, especially if someone is having a disturbance due to stress or having to stay up late or working weird hours. Taking the melatonin can be very helpful to the immune system, anti-tumor effects, anti-aging effects, antioxidant effects. It's a very beneficial hormone. Now, whether taking it affects the pineal for its intrinsic purposes or particularly for how it may be an organ of higher awareness, that's a different question, and I don't really have any data one way or the other about that.
Got it. Got it.
Now, there's also the long cycles, like the big transformational cycles, the cycle of puberty, for example, the cycle of menopause and andropause. The long cycles are also governed by the pineal gland that is literally monitoring passage of time, the day-to-day passage of time, and then the season-by-season passage of time. So the pineal gland, in a sense, is really intimately concerned with light as it governs the timing of the major cycles, the day-to-day, hour-to-hour cycles, and even the long cycles over the different phases of function of the internal biology, especially, the huge one of puberty where our whole reproductive system awakens, whether it's men or women. And then you have with women the monthly cycle, again, that is the monitoring of light versus darkness. So the pineal gland is intimate to all of that. And then we can go beyond that to, well, how does it relate to the thymus gland? Well, the thymus gland is considered the organ of immunity and rejuvenation. So if one wants to live a very long time in a very healthy body, it's important to have a well-preserved, well-functioning thymus gland. Its cycle tends to peak at about the ages of 13 to 15, and that's the best it gets, and tends to regress from there. So some of our work is, how do you reawaken the thymus gland? How do you stimulate it? How do you get it to create healthy T cells again that are what we need for monitoring our environment to protect us from viruses, or the internal environment to keep tumor cells from developing. So the pineal thymus axis is vitally important for just general health on the one hand, for immunity, and particularly if we get into discussions of longevity, because our work, as much as any aspect of it, is related to how do we re-script our biological program? How do we live not just longer, but live in much better bodies, healthier bodies, more youthful bodies? How do we achieve more of our biological potential, our awareness potential, our ability potential? And to do that, it really is important to boost the pineal gland, which is the major architect of cycles, and the thymus, which could be considered, the key organ of regeneration, rejuvenation, especially as it is important to have a healthy, well-balanced immune system that basically just takes care of what we want to be protected from, as well as avoiding the self-attack, because there are lots of autoimmune conditions where the immune system attacks itself, and there are reasons for why that is happening. And balancing the thymus gland is also important for either neutralizing those autoimmune conditions if they occur, or from keeping them from happening in the first place. And that's the biological side, not the esoteric consciousness side.
Right. So, because we discussed about the pineal, just at least you gave a gist of the fundamentals of it, so that we can understand what are the implications of taking care of these two glands and to enhance them, or maybe awaken them in the human body for higher states of mind or consciousness, or whatever you call it, or overall enhancement of life itself. I mean, it will be, it is really beneficial, that whatever you said was It will be really useful for all of us. Uh, Coming to the the fun part of the pineal, and that is your specialty again, right? You are the pioneer for the pineal tones and the advanced harmonics which they generate. Tell us about how did you conceive of the pineal tones? When did you do that? And why did you do that? And also tell about your upcoming project, the wonderful COV, celebration of victory,
Right.
and how are you going to take it further?
I think that was more than one question. So it occurs to me as we're talking.
You can just tell about pineal tones.
I shall. And it occurred to me as we were talking that I should orient people. We were talking about these organs, but not really saying where they are. So the pineal gland is no longer outside the skull like it was in some reptiles. It has moved deep inside the brain. And it's almost directly in the center of the physical brain, quite interestingly. So if you go to the very top of your head, the so-called crown area, and point directly down from there, and then go directly in from the so-called third eye area from the front, where those two lines intersect is roughly where the pineal gland physically resides in the brain. And the structure looks a bit like a little pine cone. So if you look at ancient art, like the Sumerians or Egyptians and other ancient art, you'll often see pine cone-like structures, which representations of the pineal. Even then, they had a realization that higher consciousness was related to the pineal gland. And the thymus, just for orientation, is just behind the breastbone. So the upper part of the breastbone, also called the sternum, that's the medical term for this bone, the sternum. The top part of the sternum is called the manubrium, and the larger part. And right behind that is a cell-shaped organ called the thymus gland. So just to have an orientation of where these are, what they look like, and the thymus gland grows to the biggest size when we're about 15 and then tends to get smaller and smaller after that. So part of our work is regenerating the pineal and clearing calcium from the pineal to keep it young and regenerating the size, shape, and function of the thymus gland. And the pineal tones are a vibrational, intentional method of doing that. And it's a whole story of how it came to be that ties into even discussions of ancient times and ceremonies and past lives, that kind of cool stuff. So a person that I work with closely, a good friend, even some of whom I went to an action adventure movie last night. His name is Lee Carroll, and he's a best-selling author of the so-called Cryon books. I think he was even listed as one of the 100 most influential spiritual leaders in the world right now, because he's been doing this for probably at least 20 years, and I believe he has something like books. And Cryon would be considered an angelic type being in terms of understanding, that describes not having been incarnate in a physical body, more just kind of in the higher realms, close to God or spirit or source, if you want to say that, with an intention of providing information to support higher consciousness and awareness in humanity. And the description of that work, which began in roughly the early 90s, where Lee began getting the information. I believe his first books were published around the mid-90s, where I first ran into them and into Lee. And Cryon described himself as a magnetic master, that his work here was to modify the magnetic grids of the Earth, because the magnetic field of the Earth is a couch of consciousness. So Cryon correctly described and predicted that the magnetic fields of the Earth would change in a particular way. that the field intensity would alter, and even that magnetic north would move. And all those things happen exactly as Cryon described. Magnetic north changed so much that they actually had to change the markings on runways on airports so that the markings would align with the compasses on the jets as they were landing on the airstrips. So Cryon is very scientific while also being very much about enhancing consciousness and giving information about how to do that. And I mentioned that because the reason for the pineal tones had to do with having invited Lee to speak at one of my events. And I'm really focused on rejuvenation, regeneration, anti-aging, uh, and not just living a long time, but living a long time in very healthy bodies of higher awareness. And I had invited Lee on a very special weekend in 2004, I believe, called the Harmonic Concordance. You probably heard of the Harmonic Convergence in the 1980s.
Right.
The Harmonic Concordance was a type of resonance of that, a harmonic of that harmonic. And the channel, the information that Cryon gave as the grand finale of our event was very interesting. So it was a little parable where a man wakes up one morning and he sees that his entire front yard is covered by a giant block of granite. And it's too big for any crane to take away. He can't find any equipment that will clear this from his land. And then he got an inspiration, which was to hire a sculptor. And the sculptor proceeded to create the most beautiful work of art the world had ever seen. Cryon then explained the meaning of this parable, which was that our DNA is like that. Our DNA is like the massive block of granite that contains the most beautiful work of art the world has ever seen, but it's blocked. It's blocked by the layers of granite around it by metaphor. And then Cryon described that humanity as a whole has a four-dimensional experience in reality, because even though DNA is 12-dimensional, just like superstring's theory says we live in a 12-dimensional world at least, that we're only functioning from four of those dimensions because it's blocked by what was described. And this is the only place I've ever heard this information, that there is an 8-dimensional filter blocking 8 of the 12 strands, leaving only 4 for perceived reality. So I'm sure your first question would be, as was mine, well, if there is this 8-dimensional filter blocking this higher experience, how do we get rid of the filter? How do we clear it? How do we have access to this magnificent work of art, this incredible information? And the key piece that was shared was that we already have within us, within our DNA, everything we need for complete and total mastery. So, your beautiful traditions with the various sages and saints and masters, the basic revelation was that the reason they could express themselves that way is because they had cleared what was blocking the ability to express it. It wasn't about the need to add anything unto ourselves, literally the ability to unfold and express what's already there. So the key question was, well, how do we clear that? How do we clear the filter? How do we serve as the sculptors to literally chisel away this block so that we can achieve much more of who and what we are? And I had kind of like today, a Saturday afternoon, well, almost the afternoon now, that I literally just spent a day in meditation. And I would say, using the inner vision, took a look at the nature of that filter. So looked into DNA, looked into the filter, and then asked the question, well, how do we release ourselves from this limitation? And then spontaneously, I began to make tones, like physically produce tones. And the basic idea is that everything vibrates, and there was a resonance, a particular set of frequencies that would circulate in the filter and build an energy and build it higher and higher. And then what I saw was that the filter got more and more supercharged, and at a certain point, a sort of kindling point, a catalyst point, that the filter itself transmuted into energy. So instead of blocking the action, it became energy that awakened the dormant strands. And it looked literally like processors and batteries, like a series of mini computers that when you did this transmutation of the substance into energy, you then had the power to activate the system. And there are many layers of that system, and the first level of the tones was literally clearing that first part, making the next level accessible for use and for memory and for going into your soul records, and bringing forth more of who you've already mastered in terms of the various things that we can be and become. So that became level one of the pineal tones, that particular pattern. And it was really powerful. It came with an affirmation that was in all three persons, the first person, I, second person, you, and third person, we. And in the first person, the statement, the remembrance, the clear information was that I, as a being, am eternally pure and perfect. And anything that appears to be other than perfection is merely the illusion of this experiment of our experience. So this whole system of pineal tones, where these vibrational patterns interact with the pineal gland to awaken it and to rejuvenate it and to move it to a state where we can communicate at higher levels. It all began with the remembrance, I'd say the remembrance of our divine eternal perfection, and that we're in this illusion of experience as one collective field of consciousness that we all are, to create higher and higher awareness. That everything was about this play of consciousness, this whole field that we call physical reality. And if people are doing this, I really have them repeat that affirmation with me. And then I got it in the second person and the third person. It was like important to have like the whole dynamic with the understanding that this whole process begins with literally remembering your roots, your origins, that we're divine in origin, from the divine we originate, to the divine we return, and that we have agreed, in a sense, to be not aware of that, to forget that, so we can be in this experience of reincarnation and further realization of who and what we are.
Right, right. It's beautiful about, wonderful explanation about pineal and the pineal tones also. So glad you shared a personal moment about your vision and how you took that further to enhance it for thousands of people at large, so that they can be, they can enhance their own self with these tones.
Right,
So,
right. And if you like, I'll share that
definitely,
with you. If
absolutely.
you like,
I would
it's
love
one
to.
thing
I
to
would
talk about it.
love to. Love
If you like, I will share level one with you. And then maybe not in this moment, but as people are listening to it, they can sing along. It's very powerful just hearing it. And when you sing these patterns yourself, it then anchors it within your own vibrational DNA pattern. So just hearing it is powerful and is amplified when you sing along.
Wonderful.
So the tones are interesting. So it began with level one, and then level after level came. and they sound like ancient languages. The first level really goes back to its original roots, as I understand it. The ancient Lemurian civilization, which has its remnants on the islands of Hawaii. And so the first level really sounds like Hunakane, the language of the shamans of the Hawaiian Islands. And the phrases, the first line is a mana, ka mana, and mana in that language means the supreme force, the supreme being, the highest energy, the source from which all life, energy, and experience springs. And then kama, ka is in a sense like the energy of the sky, the energy of the Father, and
Dr.
ma.
Todd, I have to interrupt you once again. Your internet is again fluttering. Is your phone again connected or disconnected? Can you just check your Wi-Fi again?
Yeah.
I mean, on your laptop, is it connected to your iPhone or just
Yeah,
sometimes
it is connected.
it
It
is
is.
right? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm
Sometimes,
hearing you well, which is good.
yeah,
So,
right.
but should I go back and repeat that at some point? If it didn't come through clearly?
Maybe it's just the streaming sometimes, probably, but that is okay. It was not as bad as the in the beginning. It was like every 15 seconds it was getting interrupted. But now, I mean,
Oh no, it's
maybe
been
only
great.
few times.
Since you enlightened me about how to
Right,
create the
right.
hotspot, it's been way better. No, it's been fantastic. So no, that was like that made it's so important that the technical is as good as it can be, and that made a world
So
of.
in interest of time, I have to ask you another question. I'll move to the next one. Uh, just give me a second. It suddenly slipped out of my mind. I'll ask about your
Oh, but let me
gematria.
show the tone. That the tone is important, actually.
Yes, please.
So, like, I know we can edit. So, if that wasn't clear, I can sort of repeat that discussion of level one, if you like, because I think that should be clear. It's like a key part of the story, and it's also experiential.
All right.
So where would you like me to go to? So I continue from where I
You're
just left
starting
off?
at Amana, and probably you can start from there because
From
before that it was
Amana.
all clear.
Okay, good. That Yapani Mayu, which is Russian for I understand. So, all right. So the first line of the first level is Amana Kamana. And mana in the ancient language and even the current language of the shamans refers to the supreme life force, the source energy, the energy that gives life and love and substance to everything. And then kama is father and mother. It is sky and earth. Ka being the father sky energy and ma being the mother earth energy. And kama also refers to bliss or the energy of supreme serenity and happiness. So, and these were the words that just spontaneously came. I didn't even have the interpretation. Only later did I actually get the meaning. So that's where it begins. And I'm just going to give you an experience of this. So if you're listening, you can just relax and close your eyes and see where it takes you, or you can even sing along. Here we go.
Wow, that was so cleansing. I mean, I could, when I closed my eyes, I think my inner world kind of opened up, as if an energetic phenomenon was happening. I
Yes,
think, yeah.
exactly.
So it was very refreshing, Dr. Todd. I mean, in the middle of all the chaos, now suddenly I'm feeling very much grounded. I'll go through this, and thank you again for demonstrating the pineal tones to all of the Mana TV international audience. My next question will be about your laser, the null laser, and as indicated, uh, technically the optical phase conjugation. Can you tell our audience about that, about your laser invention?
Mhm. Surely. The art of what we're doing with using lasers for resonance is having created a new type of waveform.
Mhm.
So imagine that the way a laser works is that the waves are in phase.
Mhm.
When you add them together, you get an amplified wave.
Mhm.
So that's what I was studying when I was 8 years old.
Right.
That laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. And I could tell that when I was in the 3rd grade.
Right.
What we've done, how we've innovated on that, is we've created an optical invention that allows us very efficiently to combine the waves exactly out of phase. So that the waves are 180-degree phase shifted, so
Mhm.
that the peaks are lining with valleys and valleys with peaks. And when we add those together, what do you think we get?
Lovely, 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 lovely. So, what are its implications on the human body if you have to, uh, how do you apply the laser on the body?
Mhm. So the implication of that is when we combine them out of phase, they sum to a zero.
Mhm.
So they're an electromagnetic wave, as you know,
Mhm.
has a sinusoidally moving electric field moving through space. And in
Right.
phase, you have a magnetic field that is moving along with it. So what
Mhm.
we've done effectively, when we combine the waves out of phase, we have canceled, we've summed to zero, both the electric fields on one axis and the magnetic fields on another axis. And
Mhm.
when we combine the vectors to a sum zero,
Mhm.
we have accomplished a lot of things. And it's a little technical. It's easier if I have graphs to show these things, but I'll
Right.
describe it as best I can, which is that we have two visible waves of light coming in, but invisible light coming out.
Mhm.
And because we have a net sum zero of the electric and magnetic fields, it alters
Mhm.
the way it interacts with matter, particularly the surface of the body.
Right.
Whereas ordinary laser light would stop within a quarter of an inch or about 5 millimeters of the skin,
Mhm.
the waveform we've created passes much more deeply, at least 10 to 20 times more deeply. And it's possibly the case that that pure phase canceled form goes all the way through the body from one side to the other. And it's a bit more complex because we don't cancel all of the light. We cancel the center frequencies of the laser. So imagine a laser, most people think of it as a single frequency, but in fact, laser is narrow wave band. So there's some wavelengths that are longer, some that are shorter, and we basically cancel the center frequencies, and then we create, as it were, a beat frequency of the higher and lower frequency. So when you're tuning a guitar, for example, and you're not quite on the note, you get that oscillation. That's a beat frequency. The difference between the frequencies is also heard as the beat frequency. And the beat frequency, we are able to achieve very high pulse repetition frequencies. So they're impulses that can be as fast as sub-femtosecond. And a femtosecond is a millionth of a billionth of a second. And that gets into the range at which molecules can rotate and vibrate, which is on the order of as fast as 10 femtoseconds. So we've created a way to achieve high frequencies to stimulate molecular resonance and vibration, as well as a waveform that can penetrate very deeply through the body. So we have depth of penetration and high efficiency of stimulating resonance. And that becomes very important when we talk about how that relates to stem cells. I think you had mentioned you want to talk a little bit about the so-called Manchester paper, which we are about to submit for publication, which has to do with our work with stem cells. And the very first experiment we did with this technology, even before we approached the method of neutralizing HIV with vibration, we built our first device because it was cost effective to build it at a lower frequency, which was in the red frequencies. And the first experiment, we could say we were super smart, and we did it with an expectation. The reality was, we know that biological systems have what are called amplification cascades. So for example, our blood clots because a little stimulus sets forth a little enzymatic reaction, which then cascades into a second reaction, into a third reaction, and you get amplification at each step. So our idea was, if we pass this new type of energy, this new type of waveform of lasers through a set of cells, we might see something interesting that would be meaningful. Well, our very first experiment done at the National Institutes of Health, the biggest biomedical institution in the world, in the US, that's government funded, we passed this new type of energy, this new type of beam, through a flask of stem cell-like cells from the bone marrow. And 24 hours later, we saw something astounding, something that had never been seen before, and which was almost hard to explain. Want to guess what we saw?
Let me take a guess, Dr. Todd. Did you see the 12 layers of DNA? I'm just guessing.
That's a good guess. Well, if I'd seen that, I'd really be a visionary, because that's interdimensional. What we saw was that the cells lined up physically where the beam had been. So whereas normally my colleague said that 8 to 16 of these cells might stick together, she saw 1 to 2 million cells that were adherent together, and they were in a line of cells where the beam had been. So our very first experiment, we had stumbled upon a way to attract stem cells to the beam and to cause them to become more adherent. In essence, we had created the song of the stem cells.
Wow. Amazing.
So because the beam can penetrate, wherever we put the beam, stem cells are attracted to go there and to adhere. And when cells stick to each other, they talk to each other. And that's how a stem cell knows what to become. Now, stem cell biology is a very complex subject, and I'm putting together actually a couple of papers. The Manchester paper is the one where we have proven that
Yeah, I was about to ask you about the Manchester paper also. Yes, go ahead.
Right. So what we have demonstrated is that just from someone's blood, we can separate an amazing type of stem cell that for unknown reasons goes to sleep at or around the time that we're born. And this type of cell has been proven to be able to make all the different types of cells of the body. And it's also been shown to be safe. Now, in the stem cell world, they talk about embryonic stem cells, which are very powerful, but they come basically from embryos. And then there are all sorts of ethical issues around that. But they're also, in a way, too powerful because any one of those cells can become a whole new person. They're called totipotent. And they can also form benign tumors in the body called teratomas that are like these great big giant hairballs with skin and teeth and nails and hair and blood vessels and muscles all wrapped around. So we don't really want that. So we don't work with embryonic stem cells, but the next step after that are cells that can't become a whole body and they don't form tumors, but they can become any type of cell. So a stem cell is a type of reserve cell that can either keep its pool going. So if they replicate, they can either um, keep their numbers at a good reserve level, or they can come out of that pool and then they can become a replacement cell for a cell that's been that has become damaged or a tissue that's been damaged. It can actually replace the cells that a tissue needs to keep it, healthy, younger, and robust. What's unique about these cells, unlike all the other types of stem cells in the body, is that they go to sleep, which means they're not replicating, which means they're not aging. They're two DNA aging clocks. Um, and the one that's most known is called telomeres, which is the ends of the chromosomes that tend to get shorter and shorter as the cells divide. If they get too short, the cells stop dividing. And these cells maintain long telomeres like newborn babies or young children. So we have this type of cell that no matter how old we are, whether we're 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 years old, these cells retain 1 day old or at least very young child characteristics. So when we are able to separate and concentrate them from blood, we then awaken them with this laser process and they become active. And because of their small size, when we give them intravenously, they can go everywhere in the body, and we then can instruct them to go where the body may need them the most. So this is, in a sense, revolutionary in the stem cell world for two aspects. One, the ability to awaken these otherwise dormant cells, because it may well be, as our Manchester paper is going to highlight, it may be the ideal type of stem cell to use for regeneration medicine for people of any age. And it can potentially regenerate the whole body from head to toe. That also our ability to send this new type of vibrational signal that starts with a laser, but then we alter the waveform relationship so it can go much deeper, effectively to wherever we need it in the body. That we also have the unique ability to increase the probability that a stem cell goes where we want it to go and does what we want it to do.
So this is the precursor for regeneration. I mean, which was not the case before.
Correct.
Right. I mean, because when as Cran indicated that starfish can grow its arm, but we cannot. So how crippled we are in that sense. But laser will enhance. I mean, eventually when a lot of people will start using your methodologies. I mean, they'll have. I mean, they'll have magical abilities to perform rather. So wishing you all the best for that also, Dr. Todd. I know I've went through your papers and your work. Is stellar. I'm pretty sure it will be the technology of the future for sure. And you've set a wonderful precedent for a lot of people who are groping in the dark to find, what can I do in this new energy. That is wonderful. That is amazing. And to delve into the, because I use the word new energy, I'll slip into the topic of your favorite, your baby, gematria. Give us something about uh, where you started, and tell us a little bit about your products too,
Hmm.
and
Sure.
how they can enhance uh, not disease, but but I'm a proponent of well-being, as I said.
Hmm.
So what are their functions in well-being?
Sure. So gematria was a name chosen because I read a cool book called The Keys of Enoch, the Book of Knowledge by J.J. Hurtak. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you've had a chance to come across that book or not.
Already, I
Mhm.
will read that one for sure.
It's very deep and
Uh-huh.
very complex, yet it, in one of its sections, very precisely described what we were doing technologically.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, it defines gematria
Mm-hmm.
as the science of determining the input energy required to build a body of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
which discloses what we were doing with the lasers by enhancing the vibrational state of nutrients multidimensionally.
Mm-hmm.
And the word goes back to ancient times, to the mystery schools,
Mm-hmm.
where gematria was the way of translating the letters in words into numbers and
Mm-hmm.
then decoding the information in the pattern of numbers.
Wow.
So it's about translating information from one form to another by
Mm-hmm.
virtue of gematria, and
Mm-hmm.
which is what we're doing in a sense with vibrational patterns, uh,
Amazing.
encoding more information into the molecular structure. And then there's a third definition, more recent, which is when we created, which is that gematria are higher dimensional waveform representations that interact in matrices to create physical reality.
Wow.
So it's literally
That's,
about, it's a bit deep, isn't it?
I don't know. I think delving very deep into the creation of everything.
Yes. Hmm. That
So
ultimately
that's why you chose
everything,
that name. Yeah, wonderful.
yes,
So
exactly.
tell us about any products related to that, and so that people can be benefited.
Right. Our very first formula was an amino acid formula that we called gemaminos.
Mhm.
And it was our first validation of the difference that the laser made. So we're very
Mhm.
big into the brain, into cognitive function,
Mhm.
into awareness. So
Very
a lot
interesting.
of our forms are related to improving our basic mental functions, awareness, brain chemistry enhancement, and so forth. So we did a test called a brain map,
Mhm.
and where you put electrodes over 20 different parts of the brain and you see how much energy is created in the brain waves that are being produced.
Mhm.
And we did a baseline test. Then we gave a person the amino acid formula that was without the laser enhancement. And it
Mhm.
was good. It actually increased the brain energy by about 35 to 45% in alpha, which was very good. But we
Mhm.
saw it reduced the coherence of the brain. It's like drinking too much coffee. So the brain was stimulated, but it lost coherence.
Mhm.
When we gave the laser enhanced version, the power of the brain went up significantly further, like
Mhm.
up to 75% or more physical brain power. That's a lot more brain power. Like who would want
Mhm.
75% more power, physical electrical output of the brain? But also the coherence abnormalities completely resolved. So the coherence was improved even better than based on the fact all the coherence defects were completely eliminated. It was like one at baseline, 10 after the amino acids, so there's more power but less coherence. And then with the laser enhancement, we saw significantly more power but perfect coherence, like someone had meditated for 10 or 20 years. So, so I often joke at events, well, you can either like do Zen meditation for 20 years, or you can take 2 capsules and wait 45 minutes.
I would go for the second one.
Right. Right. Now, we're very big into rejuvenation and anti-aging. And I read this amazing study that doubled and tripled the lifespan of animals. And the magic that made that happen was actually giving the animals once-a-week injections of DNA and RNA. Getting to my theme of DNA again. So we created a formula that didn't require injection, that you could literally absorb the nucleic acid just by spraying them under the tongue and holding them in the mouth. And we did a clinical study with middle-aged men, and half the group had the active formula and half the group had a placebo, and they were asked to walk 30 minutes a day. And after 2 months, what we found was that there was basically no change in the placebo group, but the treated group gained 15 pounds or 7.7 more kilograms of muscle while losing almost 10 pounds of weight. So basically, while losing 10 pounds, gaining 15 pounds of muscle is almost like losing 25 pounds of fat as well. So it was a huge improvement in body composition. There's also roughly 10% improvement in aerobic fitness, as well as lowering a compound called homocysteine, which is a biomarker of aging. So with the active compound, with the formula of nucleic acids, we were able to reduce biological aging markers by roughly 8 to 12 years in just 2 months. So it's not bad, becoming 8 to 12 years younger in 2 months just by taking 6 sprays under the tongue once a day and walking for 30 minutes. Now, that formula is called Methuselah, after Methuselah, as you recall, Genesis 5:27, who lived to the ripe old age biblically of 969 years. So that's kind of where our interests are, not just extra longevity, but like serious extra longevity. And I've actually written a book about that formulation and some others that are for anti-aging called Growing Younger. And I believe, if you like, I can also make that available to your listeners as a free download.
Wonderful. I mean, that will be, that'll be a great gift for all of us. Definitely we will. I mean, I'm very much receptive for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Todd, for that.
Sure. And then
In the
there's,
interest of time, I think we reached almost 1 hour.
okay.
You want to do a short
Actually,
episode, because I wanted to talk about your Merkaba dynamics, the vortex and the counter ones also, because that is also important, and your indigenous origin, and that's it. I think we can a couple of other things too, and the key laser. Can we make I mean, I will conclude this here and then do a 30 minutes short episode, and then we'll call it a day.
okay. Very good.
All right.
So to address that, we call our technology the key laser, or QI. Which,
no, that I'm going to ask you in the next
on
episode.
the next section. Okay, so what question for now?
I'm done with my questions.
Okay.
Yes. Now, if you want to talk a little more about gematria, there are 3 more minutes.
Yeah, I'll say one. There's one more form that's of interest for consciousness. So there's one more form that might be of particular general interest to your listeners, which we call GEM power. And the GEM stands for Greatly Enhanced Meridians, or Greatly Enhanced Meridian Power. And it's a triple alchemy formula. It's our only one quite like that. And the 3 forms of alchemy are monoatomic gold with other monoatomic elements of the platinum series. So it's monoatomic gold, platinum, iridium, rhodium, and osmium, which creates a symphony of consciousness of the monoatomic elements. And I won't go into great discussion there, There is work on something called ORMEs, or orbitally rearranged monoatomic electronic species, that has to do with how our consciousness can be enhanced multidimensionally and our longevity boosted. And that was part of the work in the mystery schools, working with those monoatomics. That's one alchemy. Then another is monatomic oxygen, of which there's only one source on the planet that I've had the good fortune of finding, which is included. And then the third alchemy is the alchemy of the interdimensionality of the laser waveform that we use, which in its waveform, it creates a spiral counter-spiral like DNA itself, which is interdimensional, which has some very interesting properties about creating a wave of timelessness. So for those interested, particularly in consciousness enhancement, Gem Power has those elements.
I'm there for you.
All
That's what
right.
I'm interested.
Right.
Okay.
And it has the precursors of making dopamine in the brain. So there's certain amino acids that the body uses to make dopamine, which is the neurochemical of a deep sense of well-being and, in a sense, also being rewarded. That further can become norepinephrine, which is our neurochemical of brain alertness, focused awareness. And it has ATP, which is our primary energy molecule. So it immediately boosts and balances brain energy and creates a state of receptivity to higher awareness and dimensions.
Wonderful. That is, I mean, simply stellar, Dr. Todd. As I told you, I've always been a big fan of you. Today, I mean, sitting in these two sessions, I mean, felt very emotional and it was very educational. And you have, I mean, uncovered so, so many subjects which weren't dark, especially for me. Though I was aware of so many things, but I mean, these were giving me those fractal epiphanies. Just those aha experientials. All I mean, so I mean, I didn't know how time flew. Literally, I mean, I was engaged in your conversation and your breakthroughs. That it was like literally, it was. I felt uh, a sense of eternity. Absolutely, thank you for that. And I'm pretty sure my Mana TV international audience, especially the connoisseurs of the esoterics and otherwise, because this is also a scientific discussion, so equally important for a lot of us. So even a layman can understand, because you have simply put everything in simple words. So I mean, I have not. I mean, I've spoke to a lot of others who explain sophisticated terminologies, but you have unraveled things in a very lucid manner. So I thank you for that. So with this, Dr. Todd, thank you so much. In interest of time, I have to conclude this episode too. And thank you so much for all your enlightening epiphanies you have sprinkled around our Mana TV international audience. So we'll see you in the next episode with a few other breakthroughs. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So friends, once again, I take leave. I'm Sharath, your favorite host on Spirit Talks, and we'll be back with Dr. Todd. Until then, ciao. All right. Do you think, I mean, I think I discussed about that also. Because with you, I wanted to discuss everything, Dr. Todd, because for me, this is very important, because this is my show and I have to, I mean, I'm being very particular about, the topics to be discussed. And
Sure.
because I know the challenges of people, though they don't verbalize it in the way they can, but I can sense their energies and what they're lacking, and a lot of them, are been struggling with so many things. Some are struggling silently, some are verbalizing but with no solutions. Sometimes even meditation is not working for them. Maybe they're not approaching the right teacher, or they're not having the right approach or the methodology. But I felt, I mean, intuitively I have a sense that your studies and your research and all that resonate with me, and it will for a lot of people. And I was surprised that the placebo and your product had a bigger influence on people, because sometimes, I thought that, placebos, they do miracles in life. This was something very new this was news for me. Thank you.
Welcome.
Let's touch base, and I think I've gone into pineal tones and everything is done. Gematria we have discussed. The only thing I wanted to talk about is the Merkaba dynamics, and and a little bit about your hobbies, and then I'll do a small game of sorts, rapid fire round with you, and then we'll quickly wind up.
Okay.
Already. So let me quickly start this again.
A little pani.
Yes. Oh, you know a lot of. Hindi, I think.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm. No. Welcome to Spirit Talks, dear friends. I'm Sharath, your favorite host, and we will delve into the esoteric journeys, the lovely spiritual worlds of the multiverses with the teachers and leaders of the millennium. Yet again, we have in our concluding episode Dr. Todd Ovakaitis. Amazing breakthroughs in gematria, new energy medicines, and DNA. And now you're pretty much friends with Dr. Todd because we've already done 2 episodes. So here we are again with Dr. Todd. Dr. Todd, once again, welcome back to Spirit Talks.
Pleasure.
So pleasure as always to have you on my show. And so we will conclude with some nice insights again about a couple of other things we have missed out in the last episode. So I'll quickly ask you this question. Tell me about your indigenous background, and as you are lovingly called as Yoi, tell us, how that part of psyche opened in you. How did you relate to Yoi, and how are you integrating your previous personality in your current life?
That's a great question. And just a side note, I can put a different shirt on if you want. Or we can edit that little question out, but I can change if that makes a difference to you. I do have a third shirt if you want. Or is this shirt okay?
Oh yeah. Okay. I literally forgot. Yes, we can do that.
Okay, should I do that?
Yes. Yeah. So I have to start back. Yeah, I literally forgot about it. Yeah.
One of those small details.
Yes. The same. This is only 30 minutes. 3 episodes. No. After him, it will be only one only. But with him, I wanted to do a special. Yes.
Oh, you
Hi,
look
Sharath
so
again.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great. 3 different days in one day. That's cool. We are bending time.
Yes. Yes, we are. Absolutely. And having a lot of fun too. And
Yes, of course.
I'm so glad you were very patiently with me. And, I hope you had some food, Dr. Todd. Did you have a breakfast?
I had a latte, which was perfect.
Okay. Fine. I mean,
A nice
I
medium
don't.
latte and a good dose of omega-3 essential fatty acids. So I'm ready to go.
Already. Wonderful. Already. Okay. Welcome to Spirit Talks. I'm your favorite host, Sharath, and we will delve into the esoteric journeys of spiritual leaders who are empowering humanity at large. Yet again, we have Dr. Todd Ovokaitis, our DNA giant, and the happy doctor. And today we will unravel his indigenous origin and why he is called as Yoi lovingly by all of us, and some other insights as well. Welcome to Spirit Talks, Dr. Todd.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, we are 2 episodes old, and, we're doing a concluding episode here. So quickly, I want to ask you about your indigenous origin in your past life, how that part of your psyche opened, and how you have figured that your name was Yoi, and how are you integrating that particular life into this current life, and 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 what are the dynamics behind that uh, that particular lifetime?
Well, it's quite a story, my friend. Quite a story. And it
Go
gets
ahead.
a little wild. Are you ready? Are you ready for a wild ride?
Please go ahead. Absolutely.
So, as I mentioned before, I'm good friends with the author Lee Carroll, who is the vessel, as it were, for bringing through an energy and information called cryon that has to do with magnetic mastery and shifting consciousness of humanity. And the details about a past life that are very relevant to this life really came directly from cryon. And it wasn't even private, it was public. It was at an event in Mount Shasta with hundreds of people where cryon identified that in a previous lifetime, 26,000 years ago, that I was a scientist and a priest at the same time with the name of Ya'i, and I built what were described as temples of rejuvenation. And these temples had the attribute that they were magnetically driven from magnetic ore in the earth. Magnetizing water was part of it. It was a ceremony of consciousness, which after 3 days, the person in that process would be 3 years younger biologically. So if you do the math, if you did this process every 3 years, the body would simply not age. So 26,000 years ago, there was technology that allowed us to live agelessly for as long as we wanted. And that was the art of what I did. I was the architect of that technology. Then there was a parallel technology that was another way to stop or reverse the aging clock, which was actually with the use of the pineal tones that I shared a little bit before. And along the way, I learned that as Ya'i, I was also a composer in a sense, or a creator of choirs. And I mentioned the pineal tones. Well, Quine also instructed that 26,000 years ago, we had the last Lemurian choir where we had a group of 800 singers, and 400 would sing one of the tone levels, and another 400 would sing a different tone level. So the greater power of the tones was created when they were sung in pairs, especially with large groups of people. And that in that context, they created a type of group field transmitter where the pineal glands of all the participants were vibrating in unison that created a group field transmitter for instantaneous communication across the cosmos to the civilization that was supporting our enlightenment. So is that crazy enough?
No, it was interesting. It was interesting. It was very interesting. So you were a
And,
scientist then, and even now you're a scientist. So I think you have
yeah, and
a lineage of being a scientist all along.
all for over
Correct.
20,000 years.
So I think now you are a radiating culmination of all those insights you have taken here, and probably you came with your laser, with gematria, with the uh, amazing epiphanies you have received about DNA, and also about the pineal tones and the Merkaba dynamics, and I mean, yeah, you're fantastic. You're doing fantastic, Dr. Todd. Um, I'm glad I'm doing your interview today, and I'm so happy as well that I mean, synchronicity brought us here. I mean, when I tried to approach your company and I sent an email, I was like, will I get it? But then I thought, let me put out the request to the universe. And, Dr. Todd himself, he replied to my email, and I thought, okay, I know now my belief is reinforced. So very happy to be here with you. I'm feeling as if, I'm sitting in your living room, and was having a wonderful chat. Thanks to technology, we're able to make this happen here. So, in the interest of time, again, I have to, jump to another question. Is because you are also involved in the Merkaba dynamics, and I read about the vortexes and the counter vortexes. So, can you give some detail about that? And is that, I mean, how is it helpful to humanity at large?
Well, it's a vitally important concept. And Merkaba translates to counteropose, counter-rotating fields of light that balance body, mind, and being. So it's about the spin, counter-spin, the vortex, counter-vortex. That is profoundly important at creating balance of energy, balance of mind, balance of chemistry, because only in that balanced state is our awareness really allowed to expand and our energy allowed to concentrate and elevate. Now, for understanding the waveforms, it's really interesting. Before we talked about an electromagnetic wave that has a sine wave of electric fields moving through space, and in phase and at right angles, the magnetic field is in space. There's another aspect to it, which is the polarization state of the wave. So if you're looking at the wave coming towards you, it's actually going through a polarization cycle with each complete wavelength. So imagine now we have a wave of light that's coming towards you, it's coming towards you in a spiral. Now, when we combine that wave with its exactly matching wave except out of phase, so when the waves are combined like that, we add them together and it creates a straight line to visible waves in and literally invisible waves out. What we have created is a spiral, counter spiral of light that is in perfect balance. So our laser is literally creating the Merkaba vortex counter vortex energy. What's also relevant is that the geometry of DNA and the directionality of DNA is also a spiral 3 prime to 5 prime, counter spiral 5 prime to 3 prime direction of energy and information. So the DNA itself is literally a vortex counter vortex of information going in two directions at the same time. So we've matched geometrically the dynamic of DNA with the laser, which is probably why it's so interactive with DNA. And according to Cryon, that it is a technology that can actually work directly with not just physical, but also interdimensional DNA.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I mean, it may be a little out of the context, but I wanted to ask another one that there are, I mean, is the DNA, does it emulate the fractals of the universe? Is the human body have a holographic effect on the whole universe or not?
Um, well, very hermeneutic, right? As above, so below. As
Right.
below, so above. So everything is connected, everything is related, everything could be considered part of one giant hologram of consciousness that condenses the massive energy that is much greater than we see into that small residue of energy we call physical reality. So everything is intimately connected, and everything is part of a giant fractal of information from the cosmic scale down to the subatomic scale. How it relates to DNA goes back to the very earliest work as I was evolving the information from the vision that I described.
Mhm.
And um, if you like, I'll share a technical phrase that summarizes that,
Please
which
do.
is that uh, DNA is an iterated function system generating diversity that through three-dimensional spiral structures creates gradients of vibrational fields that direct cell differentiation and division. So that's a mouthful. And
Wonderful. Yes.
let me explain what that means. So at the first part of that is talking about DNA as an iterated function system. And what that means is that with a very simple function, with a very simple translation algorithm or equation, you can create a massive amount of diversity. I mean, DNA just has 4 letters, A, C, T,
Mhm.
G, and from that it creates all the diversity of life in all the forms, uh, animal, vegetable, and single-celled organisms where you say, is it one or the other? So it does that by very simple means. That the iterated function system is also how you create a fractal.
All
So
right.
the fractal mathematics where you see a so-called Mandelbrot set, that beautiful spiral that you focus in on it and you create another spiral. You expand it, you create another spiral, and so forth.
All right.
That's created by so-called iterated functions. A very simple mathematical translation creates all that beautiful geometry at all scales, of going all the way down to the minute to something as expanded as universal. So DNA in living systems, particularly human systems, is about that fractal nature, that a simple function iterates into more complex functions. And we see it throughout the whole physical structure of the body. If you look at, say, the bronchial tubes, as you mentioned, I was a pulmonary specialist by my training,
Mhm.
that the bronchial tubes are like that. You have a basic structure, but then it splits, but it's self-similar. It splits, it's self-similar, it splits, it's self-similar. So all the branching, whether it's blood vessels or bronchial tubes, that you see that beautiful self-similarity of structure from the main structure all the way down to the tiniest, and from the tiniest up to the top. So the whole body really has a fractal-like quality to it.
Very beautiful explanation, Dr. Todd. So, so we'll I started on a fun note, in my episode one, I want to conclude on a very fun note as well. Just give a glimpse of what your day-to-day life is like when you're not doing your research. What are your hobbies?
I like movies.
I'm sure you're fond of movies, but we want to know more about
Like action
other.
adventure movies. I like X-Men and Avengers and Iron Man. I liked Iron Man because like he he was a superhero not because he was bitten by a radioactive spider, but just because he was smart and could build stuff. I kind of thought that was cool. Uh, so, well, I live in a beautiful part of the world where it's almost like eternal summer. So I'm in San Diego, and I think we have something like 30 miles of pristine beaches. So I love the beach. I love walking. I love nature. Not so far as the desert, where I get out to and enjoy that kind of environment. I'm a professional dancer by training. That was my father's occupation. So I've been a certified professional ballroom dance instructor since I was 15 years old. So when the occasion allows, I find various opportunities to dance, whether it's you know basic dance club with freestyle or there is a very good ballroom in San Diego called Champions Ballroom. It's called that because some of the national dance champions practice there. So when I really want to have a good time, I get into back into dancing at a higher level. So
Also, the dancing doctor.
yeah,
Right.
even in medical school, I was doing. I actually had over 100 dance students at one point when I was a Hopkins medical student.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. That's good.
There's even at least one marriage because of me and that course I was teaching.
Got it. And I'm glad that you are a nature lover. You love the beaches and you love movies and you're very happy. I mean, I know in real life too. I know how humorous you are with Lee Carroll, and we have heard those stories. I mean, keep yourself always happy, and I mean, you're teaching, you're living what you're preaching and teaching. So that is, you're in sync with uh, your fundamentals and your teachings. That is, and that is something to really appreciate. And we'll quickly go into the last question I'll ask about your celebration of victory in I think, and also your 2022 project, which we're
Yes.
going to discuss, and then we'll do a rapid fire, and then I'll conclude the show. So
Okay.
tell us about your 2022 Pineal Tones project.
hmm Well, this is really amazing, and there's a story around it that's quite profound. The assignment I got from Cryon to create these choirs happened in 2010,
Mhm.
and I usually don't get assignments from Cryon. In fact, it was the only time I ever really had gotten one. But it was in a group of people at one of my events, and he said, Yai, I have an assignment for you. I'll tell you what it is and where it is and when it is, and you don't have to do it, but I know you will.
Got it.
And that was recreating the first Lemurian choir in 26,000 years, a full turn of the galactic cycle, as it were.
Mhm.
And the assignment was to gather at least 400 singers on the island of Maui on the date of the end of the Mayan calendar, December 21st, 2012.
Mhm.
And we ultimately had over 900 singers. And the last time it was said there were 800.
Mhm.
And over half the people there remembered being with me 26,000 years ago when we agreed we were going to come back and do this again, which is, I thought, pretty amazing. And I thought it might end there, but it didn't. So we were given instructions each time there was a choir where to have the next one. So we built out over time a a series of events, mostly choirs, on 12 power points of the earth that Quine called nodes, and these nodes paired with nulls. So
Mhm.
as of our last choir, which was in Bulgaria, the so-called wisdom choir, all
Mhm.
12 of the node and null pairs were awakened. And these are time capsules of information left there for us by an ancient advanced civilization for our own capacity to become an enlightened planet. The
Correct.
focus of the Bulgarian choir was the victory song. And the
Hmm.
victory song is what a civilization sings when it goes from duality consciousness to unity consciousness. So it's very powerful. So singing that now is basically like creating this future of an enlightened unity consciousness civilization, not in the distant future, but making that future more present in the now, bringing that beautiful future more quickly into the present reality. And that was, how you say, the pinnacle of that experience that we had in beautiful Bulgaria. And then my assignment in Bulgaria was to go from two parts, because as I said, that we would have hundreds of people singing one tone level and hundreds singing another, and the two together create very beautiful and complex overtones and harmonics, which according to Quine is what awakened the interdimensional DNA, which awakened our knowledge of the Akashic records, which brought forth our sleeping abilities, as it were, and our capacity for great longevity and awareness. So the assignment was to go from two parts to four parts to create a four-part piece. And what that piece was going to do, Quine said, when we sing the choirs as we have, we're telling the universe that we've made it, that we didn't destroy ourselves, that we've continued, that we're, that we're alive, and that we're ready for more.
Mhm.
And going from two parts to four parts, Quine said, will take us from doing more than saying we're here. It'll take us from baby talk to adult talk with the cosmos, from a two-way communication with enlightened civilization, so we can have all the information we need, technologically and spiritually and consciousness-wise, to create an extraordinary enlightened planet of immense creativity and longevity and the human potential being realized. And even then, the information came through, and I already began to share the next piece. So the victory song was the pinnacle of the wisdom choir in Bulgaria. And this new piece was called the Celebration of Victory. And of
Mhm.
course, as we talked about before we started this meeting, that the initials for Celebration of Victory are COV, capital C, little o, big V, just like SARS CoV-2. So,
Correct.
but this was months before SARS-CoV was even on the radar. So it
Mhm.
anticipated, and I believe it's all part of this fabric of consciousness. It's like almost a cosmic joke that
Mhm.
we're creating CoV, and which is a solution, while CoV-2 is the problem. But I think it's all about all working together in a way to cause us to stop, look at what we're doing. Even the coronavirus actually is a pattern interrupt. So we stop just being in habitual patterns of thinking and can really look at, okay, I have a chance to sit back, uh, stop my usual patterns and say, okay, what am I doing and what do I want to do? What do I want my pattern to really be? And do I want to make a change of trajectory? So COV, the celebration of victory, that was supposed to be at a choir on 10/10/2020. Which just passed a few days ago. So, well, 2 weeks actually, that because of Corona, it was moved. And 10/10/2020 is a pretty cool date, but a cooler date is 2/22/22. And the whole assignment was about going from the two to the four, from from the dual to the quad, as it were, from baby talk to adult talk. And in terms of numerology, 2 is duality, but 22 is the master builder. 22 is a 4, but it doesn't really reduce because it's a master number. It is the number of being the master builder. So literally it is 2, 22, 22. We're like amplifying this concept of going from duality to being the master builders. And the celebration of victory is a 4-part piece that I shared with you that is about literally uplifting the spirit and moving to that new level. And in Maui, the first event, we had over 900 singers. We expected to be over 1,000 singers. So you can imagine 1,000 people with hundreds of people singing each of those 4 parts, what that will feel like in the room.
I mean, I can imagine. I mean, it'll create such waves of, you know, different kind of dynamics. I mean, definitely it'll, all those things will spread across the universe for, you know, I mean, uh, for peace on earth to, you know, start. So, as before concluding, I mean, as I said, we'll have a surprise for you, and that will be a rapid fire game. Are you ready for it, Dr. Todd?
I'm
I mean,
ready.
the rapid fire is just, I'll ask you one particular, I'll give you one, I'll throw one word at you, and give me one word or a sentence real quick. And then I'll go to the next, and then we'll conclude this show with your message to everybody at large, and to all of our wonderful Mana TV international audience. So are you ready for the rapid fire?
I'm ready.
I didn't script it, but I'll just go impromptu. The first one is your favorite color,
Blue.
favorite food,
Sushi.
literal,
Luminary.
the picture behind you,
Lots of love, baby.
your favorite date,
My favorite date. Oh, probably 2/22/22.
I expected that answer, Dr. Todd. Your favorite song,
Mozart's Requiem.
come again, Dr. Todd.
Well, my favorite musical piece is Mozart's Requiem. But if it's a popular music, it would be um, a beautiful symphony of life. Yeah. Or Lennon's All You Need Is Love. Do, 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 do.
I mean, I'm glad that we are concluding with the message of love. Oh, your favorite holiday spot,
Copenhagen. I love The
favorite
Little
book,
Mermaid.
wonderful. Favorite movie,
Lucy.
gematria,
Multidimensional vibrational patterns.
laser,
Source of life.
spirit talks,
Touching the hearts of the spiritual core of humanity.
Dr. Todd,
A fun person.
Yai,
Ancient master.
crayon,
Pure love. And pure
and my
information.
absolutely,
And
and my final question, question in the rapid fire will be, your favorite moment in life.
ha. Wow, that's profound. it was a moment in channel, and it wasn't like Carol, it was this amazing Archangel Michael channel named Rishar, which reminded me of my origins and my purpose.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for answering all the questions wonderfully, Dr. I had so much fun with you all along. All these 3 episodes, became very emotional, became, very cozy. I mean, I just forgot that I'm hosting this show as if it was like we were just having a wonderful chat over coffee or tea. And definitely one day we'll meet sometime in San Diego to have a cup of coffee or a glass of Coca-Cola. And
Sure.
absolutely. So
Ricky.
thanks.
Or a lime Ricky. Or a lime Ricky.
Sure. I mean, anything with you will be a pleasure to talk about different things. And I'm very sure our Mana TV International audience have enjoyed your golden nuggets of wisdom, well-being, life, and your breakthroughs all along. They are also part of your journey now. They've participated, they've watched, they've become emotional with me. So we are all one family. So on that note, I mean, I shouldn't say sad, but feel a little emotional concluding this show. But definitely, I'm so glad we became friends on these sets. So thank you so much for everything, Dr. Todd, and we'll plan something again as well with you. So till then, thank you so much and have a wonderful day ahead. So friends, that was Dr. Todd, our happy doctor, as I said. And as we know, the giant who did so many breakthroughs in DNA, the laser technology, gematria, pineal tones, advanced harmonics, and the master of the Merkaba dynamics, and so much more. I mean, he is a mystery unto himself. I mean, he said he is weird, but I said, I say that he is an absolute quantum genius. So that was Dr. Todd again, and we'll bring in more spiritual teachers on Spirit Talks. And I'm pretty sure you enjoyed this episode. And that's about it. And let's meet again next week with a different guest. Till then, ciao. That's how we are done, Dr. Todd. Thank you so much. Really, I mean, so is this, so you're at home or you came to your
this is my
laboratory?
office. This is my office.
So how far is your home from your office?
It's 10 miles.
Okay.
16 kilometers.
I mean, wonderful. Let me take a quick picture this way. Also, I'm taking a screenshot too. But anyways, this is already recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So have some food as well. I mean, I've taken almost 3 hours of your time. I mean, we're close to 4 p.m. here.
And I think because you have a little time to edit and have the final product that you're going to put out, we could also have a little time to figure out what kind of landing page to create for your audience. Because I think it would be nice for them to have the COVID report, which it talks about the solutions for every stage, whether it's prevention, early stage or late stage, so to improve outcomes. So that should be available. The Growing Younger book, I think, would be generally good information for people interested in rejuvenation. And then I can even share the victory song, which I think people enjoy hearing as well.
Absolutely. And if you can share any pineal tones which can be helpful for us, and definitely I'm going to do it every day without fail. I want to enhance. I mean, that, but even those 2 minutes of singing from your side was like, I could feel a difference in me, and I want to make. There are few challenges with me, or like everyone, but I want to counteract them with the gematria products and with the tones. But now that I found, because I've always been listening to tones on the Crayon website, but I never paid greater attention because I didn't know. I mean, I thought I was just having too many things, but now I've narrowed down on this. I mean, now I've tasted what it felt like really, because I was viscerally with you and being there, 101, and made a big difference in my today. So I want my everyday to be more and more, because the more I sing those and chant them, because I mean, vibrationally, I'm feeling very good in my body.
Great, fantastic. That's what they're for, which is wonderful.
I mean, I was not skeptical, but I mean, I have a scientific frame of mind always. So sometimes there's always that doubt which runs, oh, will this work or not? But today it was like, I could actually feel it. It was a reality for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important to feel it.
Yeah. And I felt that, and there was a lot of warmth in your talk, and a lot of substance in your words. Basically, though you have grown to such a high level of research and all. I mean, I can see how down to earth you are. I'm so honored, and I feel so honored and privileged to be in your presence. Actually, though I did not meet you in person, but this was more. Even this, I felt very personal.
Thank you. No, it was a lovely connection. I think we're getting more used to seeing each other this way because of Corona. Mostly, we weren't spending so much time in online video media, but now we do it all the time because of how things have. It's like one of the gifts of Corona, which I think will.
Right.
I think there actually was not a good intention behind it, but it's going to I think ultimately create unintended good consequences by this whole thing having happened. Interestingly.
Yes, I'm definitely praying, and I think I'll pray with your tones now, and
Very
create
good.
my own reality, and visualize and do all those things. I've been working on the chakras since few days. I was given a few things. Probably I will do that chakras with your tones also. Let me integrate that particular breathing with your. It's not a breathing, it's just a visualization, but I will chant and I will visualize my chakras being cleared, and I'm pretty sure, even if I don't visualize, I'm having a lot of faith in the pineal tones that you have created.
Yeah, well, they generally clear, balance, and enhance the chakras. So starting with the pineal, and just drives it through the system. And it's I created just for our network, I made a little 4-tone program for people. So we're happy to share that with you as well, and we can put that in the downloads if people want it.
Please. I would definitely myself, and I'll share with my friends too. I'm very glad that you're gifting us some really valuable gifts. Thank you so much.
Sure, it's a pleasure. Where is your studio located?
I'm in Staten Island, New York.
Oh wow! Okay, nice.
Yeah. Today I came to my friend's place here to shoot this interview. And she's the program director, and she is the one who arranged all the props for me, so that it looks good. Yes,
looks great.
In December 2010, I was planning to, as I told you, come to one client meeting only to meet you.
Oh wow!
But because I had challenges with finance that time, I dropped that idea. Later, life took its course, but I had so many synchronicities and started now. I'm slowly letting go of those oars, rather, whatever you call that, holding onto things that, hey, will it happen? Still, I have those things. Still I have issues with faith, but today, in this session, it was a very healing session with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed it very much also.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll connect again, through text and phone and email sometime. If I come there to San Diego, we'll definitely meet. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Absolutely. Catch
We'll watch a movie also.
good food, the whole thing.
We can watch movies also in Cineplex. I think.
That's right. Luxury theater. Just get your chair back, have them deliver your food, get whatever you want, touch a button, like being a king, being a Raja.
Oh my goodness, you know a lot of Hindi words, Dr. Todd. We must hang out someday for sure.
Of course, that'd be fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll call it a day. Thank you so much again. Thank you once again for being my guest. And shooting very patiently with me all along.
Well, thanks. I'm glad I brought some extra shirts. That worked out okay.
I mean, I forgot to tell you to bring something or whatever, but I'm so glad. Your intuition was bang on.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the day.
Absolutely. So next time with more gematria in my body and with the pineal, probably you'll see a different me again altogether. A more energetic version of me.
You're already very energetic, but there can always be that next level.
Yes. Thank you, Dr.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right.
Have a wonderful
Thank
evening.
You.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Lalish, recording stop చేసేవా? Recording stop చేయవా? Okay, bye.